Welcome to the Feel Better, Live Better podcast. Our goal is to provide you insightful conversations about all things health and wellness. We dive into the stories, science, strategies that help you optimize your well-being, physically, mental, and emotional health. Each episode features engaging discussions with health experts, real-life success stories, and practical advice to empower you on your wellness journey. Whether we're breaking down the latest medical advancements, exploring holistic health solutions, or chatting about everyday habits that make a difference, our goal is simple: to help you feel better and live better. Tune in for inspiring narratives, expert consultations, candid conversations that bring health to life, one talk at a time.
If you enjoy our podcast, please like and subscribe and consider becoming a digital subscriber to the Albuquerque Journal to help us bring you more content like this. You can find this episode and all of our podcasts on the Albuquerque Journal website, abqjournal.com, as well as YouTube, iTunes, and Spotify. See the show notes for a discount code on a digital subscription. Thank you for supporting the Albuquerque Journal, New Mexico's leading news.
Hello, I'm Kristi Fury, and welcome back to the Feel Better, Live Better podcast. This is part 2 of our 3-part series on aging well. And today we are diving into something you may have heard about, but maybe don't fully understand yet: peptides. I'm once again joined by Mary Ann Butler. We are talking about how peptides support healing, muscle recovery, immune strength, and more. We will cover what they are, how they're used, and why they've become such a buzzword in wellness and longevity. If you're curious about tools that help you feel stronger and recover faster, this one's for you.
Beyond Health is dedicated to helping patients achieve a life of health. Our passion at Beyond Health is transforming your health so you can live the very best life. Beyond Health can be your partner in your journey to optimal health.
Well, welcome back, Mary Ann. I'm so excited you're here for another episode.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm excited too.
Yes. So we're going to start talking about peptides and looking at peptides from an aging, muscle mass, recovery, longevity. So at first, I would like you to explain to our viewers, what are peptides?
Sure. So peptides are amino acids held together by peptide bonds, which is why we call them peptides, right? So depending on the size, the chain, right, then they could be, if they're really large, proteins. So basically they're like little small proteins, and we just call them peptides. And they're natural in the body.
And we have over like 7,000.
7,000 different peptides known, but only a handful of them have we been able to I guess you could say, synthesize in the lab and be able to utilize them for various purposes.
Yeah. So I think, as you and I both know, peptides is definitely a buzzword. The, general viewer has probably heard about peptides versus when we started in this space. They were very unknown.
Exactly.
And people would look at you like kind of a deer in the headlights when you started explaining. But now, because of social media, your influencers, your biohackers, peptides are a familiar term to a lot of Americans. And I would just what do you feel like is the driving force of that?
Well, kind of like you said, it's become a buzzword, and it's popular on social media. It's popular with a lot of the, influencers, I guess you'd say. And people are looking for, how can I feel better? How can I recover better? How can I build more muscle? How can I, whatever it might be. And peptides seems to fit a lot of those things. And we know that they do. But I think it's kind of sad that it's kind of like, oh, well, it's just going to make me feel better, or it's going to make me build more muscle, or this peptide is going to make me, more jacked kind of thing. Because peptides are important in the body. They're signaling agents, basically, and they signal the cell what to do, how to behave, and things like that. And so I think it's what people don't know is that they're really being researched a lot in cancer fields and autoimmune disorders and things. So like I said, like you said, there's 7,000 different peptides. So there's a lot of peptides that no one's ever heard of that are being researched. But we have these few that, like we were saying, you have heard of them, and they are very beneficial. And they do provide some of those benefits that people are looking for. But there's so much more to them.
So let's get into the more specific peptides. I think the most common, I would assume, on social media is the BPC 157. Some people call it the Wolverine peptide, which, anyways, I know you and I probably cringe when we hear that because I'm just like, okay, sure. But why don't you, to our viewers, just in general, let's explain what BPC 157 is.
Yes. So they call it BPC 157 body protection compound, right? It was discovered in Croatia. It was first discovered in the gastric juices of human beings, right? It is a peptide that was shown in the studies to be a reparative peptide, which is why they call it the Wolverine peptide, because it does have properties of repair. So in animal studies that were done, we saw improved repair of tendons and even bone, but tissue, but also in the gastrointestinal tract. So they took gastrointestinal, tissue that had been injured and used BPC and saw regeneration in that tissue. So it's a very beneficial peptide for repair, which is why it's so popular, why they're using it so much in the gym. But it helps with inflammation. We use it quite a bit for joint pain, for even like chronic tendonitis, tendinopathies, things like that, or just in general for repair.
Yeah. I think where I use it a lot is gut health. Going back to your point, it's a gastric juice. That's where it was discovered in. I think everybody knows that BPC is definitely used for recovery as far as injury. I know you and I have personal stories as far as how it's helped, you recover from injuries along with myself. But I think one where I am using it more and more is brain inflammation, right?
Yes.
Just because it absolutely decreases that inflammation in the brain. And, it's a peptide that is extremely safe, right? No cancer risk. Yes, you still need to screen a patient before you start them on a BPC.
Sure.
But you're not going to turn on the wrong cell or anything with BPC. It's basically, I shouldn't say anybody, because I'm sure there is some exclusions, but I personally really have never had anybody that I've turned down for BPC that has come to me for a consultation. And even young athletes. My daughter, when she had a volleyball injury, I used BPC and she was back on that court sooner than expected.
Right.
One, she was young, but two, she was back because of the BPC. So what other special areas do you use the BPC in?
Well, I use it a lot in gut, as you did. Yeah. We know there's so much in the way of gut breakdown, leaky gut syndrome, gut dysbiosis, things like that. And so in the whole protocol for gut repair, and even in our GLP-1 patients, right? So some of them will have really hard time with the GLP-1. So it's like, well, let's put that aside and then let's clean your gut up, let's repair, right? So I do use it a lot in that. And when you talked about brain inflammation, there is a known correlation between gut and brain, that there's what they call, so cleaning up the gut is naturally going to repair or reduce inflammation in the brain. And I've had patients come in and say, oh my gosh, I can think so much better. Like, I've been using this for the last 2 months and my brain is better. And it's like, yeah.
Well, and I think it's a great peptide to use with long hauler COVID. And again, going back to that, it's that brain inflammation, which is really more than likely also coming from the gut. So share with the viewers, maybe if there's a patient that kind of sticks out to you that had a tremendous success with BPC. Like, if you could just share that.
Yeah. Well, the one that comes to mind most is actually my daughter, who suffered with irritable bowel her whole life.
Mm-hmm.
We finally figured it out when she was about 8th grade, right? And fast forward, my mom was very ill. It was a very stressful time, and her IBS turned into a full-blown colitis, like bleeding, ended up in the ER, that sort of thing. And I had already put her on like L-glutamine, that kind of thing. But we hit her hard with BPC, TA1 to modulate the immune system, KPV, which helps to lower the inflammation also in the gut. And within days, the bleeding had stopped and she was doing better. And we continued her on that for 8 weeks. And now she does it like twice a week. She does like just a maintenance kind of a thing. And she did have one recurrence a couple years later. And we just hit her back hard immediately. And the bleeding stopped, the pain stopped, so I found that quite remarkable, but then also to the people that come into my office that, I've had this chronic tendonitis, or this wrist pain, and we put them on BPC, inject locally around that area of the pain, and they come back and they're like, oh my gosh, I can't believe it.
Yeah. I think one of mine, there's a local athlete here in Albuquerque, a football player, big, terrible shoulder injuries, right? I mean, gone to Mayo, gone to, all the surgeons, everything, they were just kind of pushing him along, and he actually had some surgeries repairing some injuries. And then he got to me from a local chiropractor here, and, I just started him on BPC and then the thymosin beta-4, which is a great injury recovery peptide too. And he was able, so I think he was a sophomore at the time at TCU playing football. And his career was basically, he was being told by everybody that it was basically, you need he's a brilliant kid. I think he's majoring in business. And he was like, you should really but his heart was still very much in football. And guess what? He's back playing his junior year. I only tell him, I was like, whenever you make it to the NFL, you better give me a few tickets to go watch you play.
Yes.
And, I think, and I've had tons of, but that's one that here was this phenomenal athlete, young man.
Yes. That
was having to be told at the age of 20, you're done.
Yeah. And you changed his course of life.
And here his family, this was the family's, he's projected to go to the NFL, and then he's being told you're done.
Yeah.
And, it's cool that because of the connections you and I have with the amount of mentors you and I have been blessed with in this industry of peptides. You and I are so lucky. We truly are around the thought leaders of this industry, right?
Yes.
And I look back at my career of saying, holy cow, we are getting the knowledge from the world experts.
Yes.
And then how you and I can apply it to your daughter, apply it to this kid,
yes,
is amazing. So let's move. I think another one that's popular is the CJC 1295 with Empamorelin. So again, just kind of give the viewers in general, what is that? What is it doing?
Right.
And we'll kind of go from there.
Sure. Yeah. So, CJC 1295 is actually a growth hormone releasing hormone peptide. Its job is to ping the pituitary so that the pituitary will release its own natural growth hormone. So anytime you talk to someone about a growth hormone peptide, they, I don't want to do it. But it is not recombinant growth hormone. This is working physiologically with your body to increase that release of your own natural growth hormone. What we don't know is that there's just as much growth hormone in the pituitary at the age of 90 as there is at 10, right? It's the problem getting it out, right?
Yeah.
Because as we age, we begin to secrete another hormone from the hypothalamus called somatostatin. And somatostatin will inhibit that growth hormone release. So there is where the ipamorelin comes in. Ipamorelin is a growth hormone receptor peptide, and it it will block somatostatin, which allows that release of the growth hormone releasing hormone. And then it will go peripherally to all of the receptors, which is just about every organ in the body has growth hormone receptors, and it will stimulate those receptors to come back to the surface so that it will now receive that now circulating growth hormone. And so, when we think about, well, what's the benefit of that? It's like, well, think about being young and your recovery and your, the health and all the benefits of growth hormone you get with increasing your own circulating growth hormone.
Yeah. So when you are thinking about a patient that comes to you that might be a good candidate for CJC 1295 and Primorin, again, what maybe not disease state, but what symptoms are you trying to treat? What is your intention? Like, what is kind of that patient that you would maybe consider CJC for?
Sure. So really, just about anyone over the age of, say, 35, 40, right, would benefit from a growth hormone releasing hormone peptide from CJC. And most of the people that come are usually going to be, the guys that are working out in the gym, and they want to improve recovery, or they want to improve muscle definition or body composition, right? However, the like I said, 40, 45, 50, 60, 65-year-old that wants to improve their overall health and decrease their intermedial thickness of the vasculature, right? So improve vascular health, improve just overall health, improve bone mineral density, improve, again, we talked about in our last segment, muscle and how important muscle is as you age. They're a great candidate for it. So just about anyone that I can get to understand that wants to improve their overall health span would be a good candidate for it.
I think one symptom that seems like almost the majority of patients they get better sleep. And as you and I both know, I mean, muscle is our biggest wealth, but sleep is vital to that circadian rhythm. Like if we really want lasting longevity health, you have to have a good circadian rhythm.
Yes.
And I've noticed CJC is a great peptide for that.
Yes.
I mean, if I have someone I'll try some basic supplements, but if they're interested in doing the CJC, that is something that I do recommend. And let's talk to our viewers. So I know, I'll back up. So BPC comes a couple of routes: oral, injectable. Is there another? I'm trying to.
There's some compounders that are making it in a troche and sublingual drops.
Sublingual. Okay, that I couldn't. But CJC is really, you need to inject CJC.
The best way to get it is injectable. But I would say that the oral, for people who have gastrointestinal issues, I give it to my grandson. My daughter breaks it open, powders and puts it in as applesauce or whatever. And because he, like his mother, tends to have internalizes things in the gut, right?
And you're referring, just so our viewers, to BPC there. Sorry,
I know. Referring to BPC.
Yeah, I wanted to make sure, our viewers understood that there's different routes of administration.
Correct. Yes.
But for BPC, but CJC, if you're going to use CJC, it needs to be injectable.
Yes.
Yeah. Which is just a little bitty insulin needle you do yourself. So very small, painless, 5 days on, 2 days off. So, unless you just travel a lot, CJC is an option for most people.
Yes. Yes.
And do you have a success story in mind that comes to you for CJC?
Oh, I think that I presented this at the Congress one year. This fella, he was like 40 in his mid, early to mid 40s. And he worked out and he, considered himself to be pretty healthy, ate pretty well and things like that. And he came and asked about, hey, can I start this peptide? He'd heard about it. Of course, that kind of thing. And then I get a text message. Don't you love those text messages?
Yes.
Oh my gosh, I haven't had such a great workout. I feel better than I have in years. This stuff is great. His recovery was better. His workouts were better. He just felt better. Yeah. He just, and that's always rewarding to me.
Oh.
I would have to say that, with CJC and people may have not, if they haven't heard of CJC, they may have heard of Sermorelin, right?
Correct.
Sermorelin being the first generation, the
came.
early one.
Yeah.
That one was actually studied in children with Turner syndrome. But children with Turner syndrome don't have any growth hormone in their pituitary.
Yeah.
So, of course, it didn't work, right?
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean it doesn't work for age-related growth hormone deficiency, which is basically what we're addressing. But anyway, but it does take a little bit longer. The things that you notice are going to be sleep, improved sleep. It takes about 3 months before you really get the body comp, and that's if you're working at it. People, like I tell my patients, there's no shot, no pill, no cream that's going to make you look like you work out when you don't.
Yeah.
So.
You got to eat your protein and you got to move.
Exactly.
And then these, peptides can enhance that.
Yes,
right?
they can.
I think for me is the older women that just really struggle to get some muscle mass on. CJC is a great option. Tesamorelin, I like. There's numerous ones that we can stack it with, but and again, it's not just about from a cosmetic perspective, the muscle growth, but these women that just, you and I know what with their muscle loss, their sarcopenia, what we're setting them up for as far as an early death from a fall, whatever fractures, whatever that might be.
Yes, exactly.
And so that's the the growth hormone peptides. I use it in a lot of patients. Men. I would say the majority is men that are on the CJC. I don't know necessarily, but I have a lot of women on CJC too. But what makes me excited is when I get that in body and I see a 60-year-old female that, holy cow, you've put on some muscle mass. Granted, they're doing their part.
Sure.
They're going back to the protein, the exercising. But then, I know that the CJC is also helping with that.
Yes.
And it's what you and I do why we do it, right? Because we know we're changing that health
trajectory
for that patient, right? So let's move to thymosin alpha-1, I think, so also known as TA1. But just, again, general terms, what is thymosin alpha-1, TA1?
Yes. So as we age, we have a thymus gland, right? And as we age, that thymus gland involutes. Well, that thymus gland was responsible for producing our B cells and our T cells for our immunity, right? So thymosin alpha is actually modulating your immune system and giving support to those T cells and B cells that you still have, much like the thymosin gland that now is involuted isn't working very well. Yeah. I read one statement regarding, it brings it back to life. I don't think I'd say that. I haven't seen really quality studies saying that, but there are quality studies out there on thymosin alpha-1 when it comes to autoimmunity, when it comes to reactions to vaccines and things like that. So there is some good literature. It was actually FDA approved under the brand name Zodexin. So it has been studied. It never made it through, I think, whatever last phase of it was, but that didn't, it's still a good drug. And it wouldn't surprise me if I don't see some pharmaceutical company, coming out with their version of it, because it is very effective when it comes to autoimmune. And that's where I've used it primarily is in autoimmune disorders. So yeah.
And I think as far as just that immune boosting, and the chronic fatigue, going back to long hauler COVID. I think, what our society, I think clinics like ours, the long hauler COVID is a real issue. And you and I, and practices like us, are really starting to see it those people walking into our doors.
Right.
That aren't even being associated when they're going to, say, their primary care or even a specialist. That thought of long hauler COVID isn't even on their radar, right?
Yeah.
But you and I know, because we practice from a cellular pathway, so many symptoms are presenting as long hauler COVID. And, if you don't, chronic fatigue can truly just destroy someone's life, right? I think chronic fatigue, chronic pain can be an end to a lot of people of living their life.
Exactly.
And that's where I'm seeing the TA1 in that population. And then also for people that are just seeking wellness. It's not an injection that you have to do every day, depending on what you're treating. But, I have a lot of patients that I'll say that, travel a lot. I'll do the injection 3 times a week.
Right.
Or, do a loading dose if you're going to be getting on an airplane and you don't want to get sick, or you feel like you're getting sick, well, then you can do a loading dose. But, I think it's not only for the autoimmune, although phenomenal peptide for autoimmune. I mean, I'm sure you and I both have story after story what TA1 has done, but also just for the wellness seeker.
Oh, yeah.
Someone that just wants to stay balanced, wants to stay well, can't afford to be sick.
Right.
Right. And then share a little bit as far as like that post-viral patient, someone, again, kind of going back to that COVID, but just anybody that's dealing with post-viral. What has been your experience with the TA1 in that?
Yes. So, again, this is the patient that you said has this chronic fatigue, and they're optimized on all of their hormones and everything else. And it's like, this has to be something related to, your immune system. And so when you're able to take that patient and modulate their immune system, then they're able to start recovering again. And so that's basically, what we're doing with that particular peptide. It's an art. So the dosing is not just one kind of a thing. It's not, it fits this person, it fits that person, so you just based on that person's symptoms and are they getting better? And if they're not getting better, well, maybe we need to increase your dose, those kinds of things. But yeah.
So we'll move. So, we all know because of social media, peptides are a buzzword. There's a lot of places you can get peptides from, right? There's tons of online pharmacies. Some of them are okay. I'm not going to tout, although, you and I, where we get our peptides from, they're FDA approved pharmacies. Right. So they're under strict regulation. They've been third party tested. The thing that I get frustrated with the online pharmacies is they state purity, that it's 99% pure, which probably is true, but they're not testing for the contaminants.
Right.
And as you and I know, you get those nanoplastics, any kind of contaminants in a peptide that you're injecting into your body, what that can do from a just a cellular reaction perspective. In fact, you can actually get the exact opposite benefit from it.
Yeah. Well, I think sobering for me was back in the early days, right? So, because we don't have access to nearly as many peptides as we used to. Prayerfully, we'll have some coming back, The FDA is definitely looking at it, and we know champions, right, in our field who are fighting for our peptides. But sobering to me early on, I was at a conference, and he presented on some of these research peptides that you buy online, that many of them come from China. Not all, there's probably some from other places, but many of them, and you don't know, come from China. That these peptides, whenever they are cleaved, there is a carcinogen solution that they put them in, and that cleaves the peptides, and then they have to be washed, right? This is a very delicate and important process, which is one of the reasons why peptides may be more expensive when you buy them from a legitimate compounder, right? But the point is that if you're getting them cheap and you're getting them off the internet, you don't know, have they really washed that peptide and got all of those carcinogens on there? So you don't, like you said, you don't know what you are injecting into your body. Is it worth it?
Yeah.
I don't think so.
Well, and I encourage my patients that just don't want to get them from me, because like you said, ours because of where we're getting our peptides from, they're more expensive.
Of course they are.
There's no way, I can't even begin to have the price that they're getting it online. But I caution my patients that if that's the route you're going to go, first of all, I can't help advise you on dosing. There, as you and I just, how you alluded earlier to the TA, there is not a protocol, right? You have to adjust per individual patient. Yes, there's some standard doses we start at, but standard dose isn't standard for everybody, right? And depending on what we're treating. But I encourage patients, I know here in Albuquerque, and I'm sure where you're from, there's some labs that you can get them tested at. And so I was like, if at the very least, if you're going to, be safe, if you're buying them online, spend the extra money and go get them tested.
Right.
For contaminants.
Correct.
Or by the time you pay that, pay for the testing, you might as well get them from me. So what if a patient or a viewer is interested in looking at peptides? How would you safely recommend a patient to start looking into it? Like, how can they know that they're going to a certified provider like you and I? I mean, we have I mean, I don't even know how many certifications you and I have, but more, but it's because you and I enjoy learning.
Yes.
And we will always learn. I mean, it's not like we went to school, we got our degree, and we're done learning.
Right.
I mean, it's an art, and you and I are still figuring out that art because it's an evolving. There is no expert. There is some phenomenal leaders in this industry, but even those leaders will even say they don't know it all.
They're still learning.
They're still learning.
That's it.
And I think that that's an important concept that yes, you and I know peptides. Do we know it all? No. But are we going to continue to learn?
Yes. Yes.
So when patients are asking about peptides, like, how do you make sure that they're getting them from a safe provider?
Right. So,
or even source.
Source, yes. And so I would say if you're not coming to one of us and you're considering another provider, ask that provider, where did they get their education? Where did they learn about peptides? Do they have certification? Because there are certifying, not in the sense of like you're a certified personal trainer, I guess. But there's certification programs where they teach you about peptides, about dosing, about how to use them safely, those kinds of things. So ask that provider if they know. If they're recommending you peptides that are research peptides, I would be a little suspicious, right? Because unfortunately, like in any field, there's people that look at things from a revenue perspective. They're just making money. They learned a little bit of information, and they because it's popular, they want to capitalize on it. And it's quite unfortunate because, like you and I have talked about just here, is that we look at this as science, and we look at this as health span and what's best for our patients, and that this is a tool to help our patients live healthy. If that is not that person, that provider, if that's not their objective for you, that they're just wanting to sell you peptides, then I would be a little bit leery about that. And then again, ask them where those peptides came from. Did they come from an FDA-approved compounding pharmacy? And there's not as many as there used to be, because of the FDA and the regulations, and because of the Category 2 listing. But there's still some peptides available out there, and there's some compounders that are willing to continue compounding them. And again, hopefully we'll get approval for, and I'm hearing through the grapevine, that the FDA may be, releasing some of that information. But
so, just in wrapping up, what in the future, like, what are you most excited about peptides? Like, as far as, kind of what we might be treating it for. Like, what are you most excited about?
So peptides in general first. Peptides to me are the future of medicine. Because peptides are, like we said, natural in the body. They're signaling agents. They help the cell do its job better. If the cell's not functioning like it's supposed to, there are certain peptides that can go in that are being researched now. Not that we've talked about, but can go in and just help the cell, right? And so when we think about the difference between, say, peptide therapies and, say, a pharmaceutical drug, peptides are pleiotropic, meaning that they have multiple benefits. And I love things that have multiple benefits. So it's not just addressing one thing. It's not blocking a receptor, tricking the body, trying to just solve a symptom. It's trying to help the body on a cellular level function better. And so that I'm very excited about peptide therapy in general because of that. And I'm excited about some of the peptides that we know are out there, but just we haven't been able to get them to come to market, because of that reason, because we know that they help in the mitochondria. They help in the nucleus. It's that to me is exciting. I get kind of nerded out on it.
They truly help with, creating life change.
Yes.
Which is, I know, a mission of both of ours, right? Of every patient that comes into us, what keeps us going back every day is knowing we're helping that patient live a better life.
Yes.
Right? Well, thank you again, Mary Ann. This was fun.
Thank you.
And thanks for all the great information.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.